In the not-too-distant future, humanity finds itself on the brink of annihilation, and the threat comes not from space, but from beneath the waves. My name is Fox. One day, aliens invade the human world from the depths of the Pacific Ocean. A portal between two worlds opens in a rift between tectonic plates, and from it emerges a giant monster known as kaiju. It wreaks havoc on cities and kills countless people, but humanity manages to repel its attacks. People begin to rebuild their lives, but then 6 months later, another kaiju appears. 3 months later, another one, and then it becomes clear to humanity, this is not going to stop. All the nations of the Earth unite and create their own giant defenders called Jaegers. Due to their immense size, they are controlled by 2 pilots who must be mentally compatible and share control of the Jaeger. One pilot controls the right hemisphere of the brain, while the other controls the left. Jaegers successfully destroy kaiju, and their pilots become global celebrities. One day, brothers and Jaeger pilots Riley and Mako Beckett are tasked with locating and eliminating a Category 3 kaiju known as Scunner, spotted in Gogea near Alaska. The brothers suit up and enter the Jaeger codenamed Gypsy Danger, connecting to the drift, where the minds of the 2 pilots merge through their memories, allowing them to share control of the massive machine, each controlling one hemisphere. The stronger their bond, the more effective they will be in combat. Gypsy Danger heads to the designated location and encounters the colossal kaiju. A battle between the 2 giants ensues. The brothers fight with precision and coordination, but realizing that defeating the monster in hand-to-hand combat is impossible, Gypsy Danger unleashes several volleys of plasma blasts, and the kaiju disappears into the depths of the ocean. Just as the pilots are about to celebrate their victory, the kaiju emerges from the depths and attacks. The Jaeger sustains hull damage, and the kaiju grabs Mako, dragging him out of Gypsy Danger and killing him in the process. Riley, now alone, finishes off Scunner and brings the damaged Jaeger back to shore. Random passers-by find the injured pilot and call for help. Soon, humanity realizes that the kaiju are evolving, becoming stronger and more resilient. They learn to destroy Jaegers, and pilots are killed one by one, making it increasingly difficult to replace them. Despite the objections of Marshal Pentecost, the commander of the Pan-Pacific Defense Corps, the High Command decides to scrap the Jaeger program and shift to building a wall, which they believe will protect the entire world. Meanwhile, unable to cope with the loss of his brother, Riley leaves the program and becomes a construction worker on the very same wall. He works tirelessly, trying to forget his brother's death. One day, however, a message arrives that a Category 4 kaiju has breached the wall in just 1 hour, raising questions among the global community. Having broken through the government-constructed barrier, the monster destroys one of the remaining Jaegers. During this time, Marshal Pentecost arrives at Riley's location and pleads with him to return, as time has shown that the Jaeger program is humanity's only hope. Riley refuses, but Marshal reminds him of his brother. The translated text is a close and accurate representation of the original Russian text. It maintains the original meaning and flow while using natural English phrasing and conventions. And he asks the guy to join the ranks to save others. Riley flies to Hong Kong, where all the remaining Jaegers are mobilized, including the outdated but sturdy Gypsy Danger. Marshal Pentecost personally meets Riley and assigns him a trainee named Mako as an escort. Marshal also takes Riley around the massive hangar and introduces him to the new Jaegers. Crimson Typhoon has 3 arms and is piloted by triplet brothers. Obsidian Alpha is the oldest and heaviest Jaeger in the Corps, controlled by Alexei and Sasha Kaidanovsky from Russia. And finally, Stryker, the only Jaeger of the latest generation, is piloted by pilots who are old friends of Marshall's. These are Hans and his son. Riley has a lot of questions. After all, a small number of Jaegers won't be able to cope with the ever-increasing number of monsters. And then Marshall reveals his plan to Riley. They want to strike the rift with a thermonuclear warhead of such power that the explosion should collapse this portal. Meanwhile, scientist and mathematician Gottlieb calculates that the kaiju have become more frequent and a double appearance is imminent. He shows Mako and his team a virtual structure of the rift and predicts its destruction if the bomb hits the right spot. And the scientist's colleague, biologist Geiler, having studied the remains of the last killed kaiju, proves that all monsters are clones. In the meantime, Riley finds his repaired Gypsy Danger, and Mako confesses that she dreams of becoming a pilot. She was the one who selected his partner, and is sure that Riley is not suitable for anyone. The next day, training begins, where Riley shows brilliant results, defeating one opponent after another. Unexpectedly, he challenges Mako to a fight, a compatibility test. The opponents clash, and after a stick fight, the girl emerges victorious. Riley asks Marshall to allow her to become his second pilot, but he categorically refuses. Meanwhile, biologist Geiler, defying orders, conducts an experiment, connecting himself with the surviving part of the brain of the kaiju Scunner, which Riley killed 5 years ago, using a neural bridge. Just as the pilots enter the drift, the scientist also enters the drift with the kaiju and merges his and its memories together. At this time, Marshall comes to Mako and returns her the children's shoe and the promise he once made. The woman comes to Gypsy Danger, and together with Riley, they begin their first drift in training. Marshall watches the test closely when he's interrupted by Gottlieb's shouts. The fact is that the mathematician and biologist have come to a terrifying conclusion. The kaiju are artificially bred clones created by a race of beings who seek to colonize Earth. Humans are just pests to them, and even the especially large Category 4 kaiju are just scouts, followed by exterminators soon. Marshall asks the scientist to conduct another session to confirm their findings and possibly obtain new information, but for this, they need another kaiju brain sample. However, it can only be found on the black market, which is controlled by the smuggler Hannibal Chow. Meanwhile, during training, Riley gets distracted for a second, remembering his brother, which causes Mako to drag him into her memories. From these memories, it becomes clear that she lost her family when she was still a child during a kaiju attack on her city. Under the power of these memories, the girl activates the weapon, and Riley tries to stop the tragedy while the pilots and workers quickly evacuate. Technicians manage to turn off the power, saving the situation. However, the test is failed, and now Riley and Mako are considered failures. One of the pilots, Chuck Hansen, insults Mako for this, and immediately receives a punch from Riley. A good, lively fight ensues, but Marshall stops it and announces that he's removing the girl from piloting. Upset, Mako locks herself in her cabin, and Riley confesses that he knows the real reason for her removal. It was Marshall who saved the girl from the kaiju when he was a Jaeger himself and now fears for her. However, Marshall cuts off the conversation. Later, Riley apologizes to the girl. He should have warned her what the first drift would be like and tells her about his brother's death. Meanwhile, a message comes about the activation of the rift, and all Jaegers except Gypsy Danger go on a mission. Soon they meet with 2 kaiju, and a fierce battle ensues. First, the triplet pilots are killed, and later, Hansen's Jaeger. The kaiju releases a powerful electromagnetic pulse that disables all electronics in the area. Marshall tries to find a way out when Riley reminds him that Gypsy Danger is an old robot that is controlled by a nuclear reactor. Marshall realizes that there is no other way and sends Gypsy Danger, piloted by Mako and Riley, into battle with the kaiju. At the same time, one kaiju makes its way to the shore and starts rampaging, while the second circles around the immobilized Jaeger of the Hansens. Not wanting to die just like that, they get out of the robot and shoot the monster with signal flares, which only angers the giant. But then Gypsy Danger appears behind him and enters the battle. Displaying incredible endurance and teamwork, the Gypsy Danger pilots destroy the kaiju and save the Hansens. But there is still one monster left, which continues to wreak havoc on the city. Biologist Geisler suspects that it is looking for him, since the drift is a two-way bridge. As he saw what the kaiju was thinking, the kaiju also saw what he was thinking and where he was. The scientists prepare for death, but when the kaiju breaks through the shelter's ceiling, Gypsy Danger catches up with it. After a long and stubborn battle, the flying monster grabs the robot and lifts it high above the ground. The Jaeger manages to activate its sword and free itself from the grip. It falls from a great height, but thanks to professional maneuvers with fuel dumping, it remains intact. The people rejoice, realizing the victory. Marshal orders to start the restoration of the Jaegers, and Riley and Mako are greeted as heroes. Meanwhile, Hannibal's men find the remains of the kaiju and begin to butcher them. The biologist waits for the brain to be given to him, and then it turns out that the monster is a female and is expecting offspring. The embryo breaks free from the mother's womb and in a final throw swallows Hannibal, after which it dies. And the biologist examines the boot of the black market owner that remains from the owner. Meanwhile, the Sentinels inform Marshall about the kaiju hovering over the rift, as if the monsters are going to protect it. Marshall commands a general assembly and himself replaces the wounded Father Hansen in the Jaeger, despite the fact that he suffers from radiation sickness, since the first Jaegers were not equipped with protection from radiation. Meanwhile, Geisler and Gottlieb once again penetrate the consciousness of the dead kaiju embryo, this time doing it together. And at this time, the two remaining Jaegers, Gypsy Danger and Stryker, are equipped with nuclear bombs, land at the rift site, and descend to the bottom of the ocean. Technicians detect a very fast kaiju near them and warn the pilots, but they do not see him and continue moving into the rift. They are stopped by the cries of scientists who have emerged from the neural portal. Only kaiju can enter it. Their DNA is a figurative key. Otherwise, the nuclear bomb that Marshall planned to drop into the portal will simply be thrown back. And at this moment, another kaiju of the fifth, previously unseen category appears on the radar. Gypsy Danger and Stryker engage in a fierce battle. Gypsy Danger kills one kaiju, but also receives severe damage. And at Stryker's, after a very strong blow from the opponent, the nuclear bomb release systems fail. Marshall and Junior Hansen realize that there is no other way out and detonate their bomb, destroying the monsters and clearing the way for Gypsy Danger. Gypsy Danger uses the carcass of the killed kaiju to try to enter the portal, but its path is blocked by another monster that survived the explosion. Having made a desperate lunge, Gypsy Danger grapples with the wounded monster, receiving even more serious damage, but still falls into the rift. The free fall of the robot into the abyss begins when its system warns of a loss of oxygen. Riley shares his supply with the unconscious Mako and throws out a rescue capsule with the girl, and he himself continues to dive because he needs to blow everything up. Soon, Riley finds himself in another world, where he sees the kaiju watching him and detonates the robot, managing to catapult himself into the rescue module at the very last moment. Scientists on Earth celebrate the explosion and then the closure of the portal and rejoice at the realization of salvation. Mako, who has come to his senses, swims to Riley's module, but the guy shows no signs of life, and only the girl's tears bring him back to his senses. Hansen Sr., who took the place of the deceased Marshall, announces the salvation of the world and drops the stopwatch. This is the movie we got. Supposedly Transformers vs. Godzilla. This film was directed by Guillermo del Toro, so I'll say right away that although it's over 10 years old, the graphics there are very good, a large-scale epic. Not a bad plot, which can be called good for an action movie, but overall it's kind of straightforward and simple, and in the lead role there is one of Guy Ritchie's favorite gentlemen. In general, I recommend watching Pacific Rim in its entirety, and preferably on such a screen. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to. Please note that the provided text seems to be a summary or review of the movie Pacific Rim, rather than a complete translation of the original Russian text. If you provide the complete Russian text, I can provide a more accurate and comprehensive translation.